Hi, this is Walter Weesey with Yellowstone Country Fly Fishing and Parks Fly Shop with my weekly fly tying video for April 2nd, 2019. And what I'm going to be doing today is I'm actually going to be fishing coming up here. This is an extended body girdle bug or rubber legs or pat rubber legs or turd. It has a lot of different names, but it's just your basic spandex rubber leg stonefly. And this particular one. I tie regular girdle bugs as well. I like this one of late because it's got a little bit of extra movement. But this particular color is actually my favorite color in the spring on the Yellowstone River. And most people figure fall is big fish time, and I actually catch a lot more big fish in the spring than I do in the fall on the big river. April is definitely the time. Late March and April is definitely the time I get the most big rainbows and rainbow cutthroat hybrids in particular. And I've actually got 3 guide trips coming up here: Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of this coming weekend. And so need quite a few of these. The other thing that I need to do is make an announcement here. I'm going to be tying flies at the Wasatch Fly Tying Show coming up in mid-April, and I'll have books for sale there as well. I'll have some specials on show pricing, and that's the Friday and Saturday coming up the week after. I'm leaving the 9th of April to go there. And so that weekend, I'm going to have show specials at the show for pricing on guide trips. But if anybody wants to give me a call on those days, I'll also extend those specials for summer guide trips to anybody who gives me a call that particular weekend. And I'll have more details on that for my video for next week, which I'll film right before I leave. Anyway, I'll go ahead and get started here. So what I've got here is a size 6 Dairiki 135, which is a scud hook, and then I've slid on a black 3/16 inch tungsten bead. And I do think you should use tungsten on this particular fly, because the hook shank is so short, you're not going to get enough wire underneath it to give it the proper weight otherwise. And I've smashed that barb to get that bead over the barb. And for what's worth, I generally tie flies on barbed hooks. I never ever fish barbed hooks, not for anything. I mean, I could be fishing for carp, and I wouldn't be using a barbed hook. I'm just so used to smashing them on stream that I don't do it at the vise unless I need to get the bead onto the fly or for some other reason when I'm tying the fly. So the thing I've done here is I've started my thread, which is 6/0 uni in dark brown, ahead of the bead. And so what I'm going to do here is take some copper brown spandex legs. These are Speckled Sexy Floss by Montana Fly Company. I cut off 3 of those. I'm going to take one of them, and I'm going to even out the tips on that, like so, and then cut it in half. And set that spare half aside because you'll wind up using that later in the fly. I'm going to take that half section I just created and even out the tips of that, and then just come in here and right behind the eye, I'm going to come in and just kind of pinch that in. And the first wrap of doing this is always kind of a pain, especially since I don't have my backdrop to see where my thread is going here. There we go. And usually you'll wind up getting a little bit too much of the pinch when you're tying it in. And so I don't know if you saw what I did there, but I got that first wrap to actually grab, and then I slid the legs ever so slightly forwards to leave a smaller amount there to tie off. I'm really trying to keep my tie off point here pretty minimal because I'm going to slide that bead up and over the thread wraps there, and so if I have a big lump of thread, that wouldn't work. And then I came in here and I did a 3-turn whip finish in front of those legs, and you can probably see how those cocked up when I did that. And that's going to keep those from coming down and blocking the eye after I slide the bead over that thread. So what I'm going to do here, when I slide this bead up and onto those thread wraps, I'm going to really have to shove it. And so odds are I'm probably going to tear up that thread a little bit, weaken it. And so what I'm going to do here, I don't really need this to keep anything in place, but I'm doing it for reinforcement. I've got my super glue here, You notice I'm not putting that on the thread wraps mostly. I'm putting it on the hook shank. And the reason for that is I don't want any of that to get up into that into those legs. I'm going to shove that up there on that thread pretty hard. And you'll see, you can see here I didn't quite get it all the way up there. That's okay. I just want to get it close to the eye of the hook there. Okay, and then the next step here, I come in here with 035 lead wire. And since I'm using these almost entirely outside of Yellowstone Park, I generally tie this color with lead wire. In the fall, when I'm fishing girdle bugs a lot in Yellowstone Park, I'm more typically going to do that with lead-free wire because lead wire is not legal in Yellowstone. I came in here and I got a little bit too much lead on there, so what I'm going to do is just grab that with these are actually my barb smashing pliers, and just break off that little tag, and then the rest of it I can just kind of fold down there. I almost always tie my girdle bugs, whether, extended body like this one, or just your standard, 3x long nymph hook girdle bug. I almost always tie them with a bead. You don't see them in shops very often with a bead, and most commercial companies don't sell them with a bead. But you can see there, one of the things I did, number one, it looks good because it's a bead. But number two, all I need to keep that lead from moving down the hook shank here is just kind of a dam at the back of the lead there. And so it actually makes for more efficient tying, so I don't have to make a thread base and super glue the lead down and so forth. I'm still going to go through here and just kind of start building a thread base over those lead wraps. I don't really build much of a thread base over my lead wraps when I tie girdle bugs. So the next thing I did here is I grabbed one of the other two legs I cut off there at the beginning, pieces of spandex. And I'm going to come in here and that one I just pinched it in half here. I'm going to do the same thing I did at the front. Just going to kind of tie that in here. And this one I'm not quite as worried about getting that tie-off point super tiny like I did at the front. Okay, and then my body on this fly is New Age chenille, which is just kind of a tritone chenille. It's got tan and brown chenille fibers there, and then some copper flash. And like I said, this is actually my favorite color in the spring on the Yellowstone. I don't use it as much in the fall, but in the spring I really like this color. And this material, like I said, is New Age chenille, and at least I think I said that. And it's by Cascade Crest Tools. This particular color is called Henry's Lake, which I suspect they're intending it to be a caddis pupa for the big traveling sedge lake caddis. But here's where kind of the magic happens on this fly. So those legs are obviously a lot longer than I'm going to want them to be in the end, but that's about what I want once I get the articulated body down to about here, or a little shy of that. And so the legs here are also the core for the extended body. It's not an articulated body, I misspoke there. It's an extended body where I'm going to actually wrap this chenille back over the legs here. So I've got that, and a lot of times I'll tie with an entire ball of chenille to keep myself from wasting any, but you really do need to have, just a normal size. I've got about a foot of it here. That's about the most you can work with comfortably doing this. So I'm going to take those and kind of stretch those legs a little bit, and take the chenille in the other hand here and just start wrapping back. And you notice I just let it go there. That's fine. I'm not trying to make this tight at this point. There's a step right before I tie off this chenille that's kind of the magic in terms of keeping it tight, keeping everything together. You might be looking at me do this and think, well, that's not going to be durable. And I've found that this fly is just as durable as any other girdle bug. So I've got back here one layer kind of spiral wrapped back, and I think that's about where I'm going to want that. So what I'm going to do here is grab that with my opposite hand and then kind of choke up with the hand I've been holding those with. I'm not actually holding the body itself. I've just got my fingers kind of right at the end of that body. Because if I was actually grabbing the chenille right now, there wouldn't be as much give when I wrap my way back. It's not going to twist and turn and kind of adjust to the tension of my wraps. And so I'm actually still grabbing that spandex. I just got my fingers right at the end of that body, and that's going to keep any of that chenille from sliding back at this point. And so kind of do the same thing going back the other direction. I suspect I may have made the extension there just a little bit too long, but the fish obviously don't care. Okay, so the key here now is I'm in here, I've got right up to the back end of that hook. You see how this is really, really floppy. That's not durable. There's going to be a weak spot there. Fish teeth, rocks, etc. could get to that thread core of the chenille and break it right there. So what I'm going to do here is make a couple extra wraps really tight. This is the only spot on the extension that I'm worrying about getting it tight. Get a couple really good tight wraps there, and you notice how now that doesn't have as much give to it. And then I'm going to make another half wrap forward and kind of tie that off right where I tied it in. And you know, if you wanted to make this a kind of two-tone fly, which I'll sometimes do, especially if I'm tying something for fall run browns, you could cut off the chenille here and switch colors or something like that. What I'm going to do is just kind of pull that back and let it hang, because I'm going to use the same chenille for the rest of the fly. So I'm going to advance my thread now a little bit, and first thing I'm going to do is grab that, well, I can't find it. I'm going to lost my tag end rubber there from tying in the horns on the fly here. But anyway, I grabbed the third piece of spandex and cut that in half again. And this one I'm going to tie in like so to form the legs. And I do like, if I can, it's probably not crucial, I like to kind of finagle with it and get those legs to be oriented ever so slightly back. You know, the rear set of legs, and then the middle set of legs I'll want to be more or less parallel, or I'm sorry, perpendicular to the fly, and then the front set I'll want to be ever so slightly angled forward. And that's a little bit too much. And so what I did there is I kind of secured those on top of the hook shank with X wraps, and then did a few more wraps to get it positioned how I wanted it. I'll grab the other half of that leg here. And a lot of times I'll make the first X wrap just kind of loose, and then use that little bit of tension to get the spandex legs where I want them. Advance again a little bit here, and like I said, I seem to have misplaced that spare leg I'd cut when I was tying in those horns, and so I got to get another chunk here. It's funny, I've tied 6 of these today. I'm going to tie 3 dozen of them for my trips coming up, and this is the first one where I didn't get, you know, I had any waste at all in tying in the legs. Alright, so I've got those X wraps in. I'm going to make that a couple more turns here. And really, the one I really do want to angle slightly is the back set, because you can see here I've got a whole lot of legs up here at the front. Near the back here I've got this long extension without anything on it, and so having the legs point slightly back there, I think, you know, gives that middle portion of the fly a little bit more movement. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead here, made a half hitch, drop my bobbin cradle here, and then right before I wrap the chenille forward, I'm going to go in here, and here I am using head cement. If you watch my videos regularly, you'll see I usually use super glue. In fact, I did on this fly. I already used super glue for cementing purposes, but because this is right on those legs, I didn't want to use super glue. That super glue will damage these legs. All right, so I'm going to come in here now and just, I really do like using the rotary function on my vise for this purpose, because I can kind of work the chenille back and forth while rotating my hand, and that's going to get me, there we go, get me up to the front of the fly here without getting anything bound down. Actually got some of that lacquer on that leg, and it's not going to damage that leg, but it obviously made it curl up a little bit. You can see that right here probably. The fish aren't going to care. That's the sort of thing where if I was selling it, you know, if I was tying these for wholesale production to sell to a shop, that one I'd probably have to throw in my own box. But since I'm throwing these all in my own box anyway, I'm not too worried about it. And then the last thing here, of course, is just tie off that chenille, cut it, and then whip finish. And, you know, you could use, If you wanted to, you could use, bright orange thread or something like that to get a hot spot there. I usually just use the same thread, kind of a neutral tone. And I'll also tie this fly with, in this color, I'll also use a copper bead sometimes. In fact, I'm going to switch over to using a copper bead on the next one I tie. And then I'll, when I'm tying brown ones for use in the fall, when we're fishing either for browns on their spawning runs, pre-spawn browns, or we're fishing for rainbows that are coming up behind them to eat their eggs, I'll sometimes replace that with either a pink or an orange bead. But there you go. That's an extended body girdle bug, or Pat's rubber legs, if you will. And I think it's got a little bit more movement than your standard girdle bug, and just looks a little bit different. And so sometimes the fish like to see that. As always, thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the box below. Feel free to get in touch with me about guided trips on the Yellowstone River or in the whole Livingston, Montana area. And as I said, if you're in the Salt Lake area, by all means, say hello at the Wasatch Fly Tying or Fly Fishing Expo coming up here. And I will have some books for sale, and I'll also have some discounts on guided trips. And I'll go into more detail with that next week. Thanks.